Ladies and gentlemen, our program will be beginning in 2 minutes.
Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started here. Thank you so much to everybody for attending our conference. We hope you're having a great time. This is the afternoon lunch session. I want to thank Physicians Realty Trust for sponsoring this session and making it possible for Governor Thompson here to be here with us. With that, I want to say I'm pleased to be sitting here with the Honorable Tommy Thompson. I'm sure most of you are familiar with Governor Thompson, but he is the former 4-term governor of the state of Wisconsin, and in fact, Wisconsin's longest-serving governor. Among Governor Thompson's many achievements, he served as the Secretary of Health and Human Services from 2001 to 2005, and he currently serves as the board chair of Physicians Realty Trust. I wanted to mention that this session is meant to be interactive and lighthearted, a lighthearted discussion. We're going to interview Governor Thompson. Towards that end, once I get started, we are encouraging audience questions throughout the discussion. I'll try to make a few reminders here. So with that, we're going to go ahead and get started here. Governor Thompson, thank you for your time today. And
Michael, thank you.
Welcome to the Revista.
It's great to be here, and it's great
Forum.
to be with you on this program. And hopefully we have a lot of interaction, a lot of questions. Politically, it's the time to ask questions.
Sounds great. Well, let's get started then.
I'm advising Donald Trump, so if you want to know what's going on, just ask me.
So, Governor Thompson, we know you were the governor of Wisconsin for 4 terms.
That's correct.
And the secretary of HHS. Mm-hmm. So, which did you like better? And is there another political office in your future?
Well, I hope so. I'm only 75. I got a lot to accomplish yet. I always tell people a story about the difference between being a governor and a secretary of Health and Human Services. When I was governor for 15 years, I wake up in the middle of the night and have an idea, write it down, and if it was a good idea at 6 o'clock in the morning when I got up, I'd take it into the office and have people working on it by 9 o'clock in the morning. And without any problems whatsoever, we could implement it very quickly. As secretary, I found out that didn't work quite that efficiently. I still had the ideas, wake up and have an idea and you write it down. If it was a good idea, the next day you take it in. But in the secretaries, you had to get buy-in from 69,000 employees, all who think they're smarter than the secretary. And that's how many employees I had, 69,000.
Wow.
And then if they did buy into it, then it goes over to the super god in our society. And I bet nobody in this audience thought that we had a super god in our society, and it's called OMB, the Office of Management Budget. Mm-hmm. And they have the awesome power. They turn you down 4 times out of 5 just to show you who the boss is. And then if you do get buy-in from them, it goes over to the superintelligentsia in the White House. This is a young college graduate who worked on a presidential campaign, has never had another job, but somehow ended up in the White House, and they don't think anything smart or original can come from a secretary. And if you get by the superintelligentsia, it goes to the president. In my case, President George W. Bush. And if he bought into it, it goes on to Congress. By that time, you retire. That's why nothing gets done in Washington. And that's the big difference between being a secretary and a governor. But that's fairly accurate as to what happens. That's why federal government moves so slow, and all of you deal with CMS or FDA or anything dealing with health care, it moves extremely slow, way too slow.
Yeah. So, but after being in government so long, do you really miss anything?
Oh, I miss it every day. Yeah, it's like anything else. You grow up and you're involved in something, whether it be farming, whether it be small business, whether making a deal. I mean, making a deal for your health care reach. If you're not making the deal, in your case, gathering the data, if you're not gathering the data, you miss it. Mm-hmm. And so I got to say, that being governor and being secretary, I was extremely, fortunate to have two very high-ranking positions in government that you could, accomplish a great deal. And when you can accomplish something that's good for a lot of people, it makes you feel good, and you like to keep doing it. And then when you leave, and all of you have left some jobs, when you leave, the people that replace you, you look back over your shoulder and say, they're really not doing as good a job as I'm doing. You know what I mean, Mike?
I know.
You started your company, but I bet you look back at your old job and
every day.
And I'm sure you're saying, well, they're not doing as good a job as I was doing. They certainly are not doing as good as my company.
Yeah.
And so, it's that remorse, but actually you want to keep doing it.
Yeah. So you mentioned achievements. What was your crowning achievement over your career?
Oh, I had so many. It's pretty hard to just say one. As governor, I changed welfare in America, and we had 100,000 cases of people on welfare when I started as governor. And I used to bring in welfare mothers to the executive residence, beautiful mansion on Lake Mendota. They never thought, that they would ever be invited first to meet a governor, and then sit down and have lunch with them. And I wanted to hear from them why they weren't working. So I'd invite just the welfare mothers in to have lunch with me, and not invite anybody else. No caseworkers or anybody else. And I asked them, and they'd be very reluctant to talk to me at the beginning. But by the end, they thought, I was an all right guy. I'd crack a couple jokes, and they felt good. I said, why don't you go to work? They said, well, if I go to work, I lose my health insurance. And I said, that makes sense. And I lose my health insurance myself, my children. And I said, well, what if I provide you health insurance? That'd be great, but who's going to take care of the kids? I got 3 or 4 kids. Who's going to take care of them if I go to work? And I said, well, what if I provide you with daycare? They said, well, that's great, but I got pregnant when I was 14, dropped out of school. I mean, just using a typical example, and I have no skills. And I said, what if I give you some vocational training to give you a skill necessary for you to get a job? And they said, well, that'd be great, but most of the jobs are out. There was always one more thing for a while. I was wondering if it was ever going to end. And I said, what if I provide transportation? They said, fine, go to work. And over that, I set up a program with President Reagan and President Bush, who was governor, and they agreed and gave me the waivers to allow me to do that. And then I was able to set up a program. We were able to reduce the welfare caseload in Wisconsin. We had 100,000 cases when I left to go take the secretary's job in Washington. We were below 6,000, over a 93% reduction. Nobody's ever done that. And the thing was that people wanted to work. Yeah. And if you gave them the tools necessary, and it was expensive at the beginning to start it, to implement it, but by the end I was making money, for the whole program for the state and federal government. And Washington, one of the big things happened, 9/11. All of us in this room remember 9/11. I was secretary in 9/11, and first plane hit the South Tower, and the second plane hit the North Tower. and you could tell, and the president was in Florida, the vice president was in a subterranean office that was in the White House. It's way down, and everybody else was told to leave, and I wouldn't leave my post because I knew that the city of New York needed medical supplies. So I was the only person outside of the military to get a plane in the air that day. If you all remember, every plane was grounded. And I was able to get a plane in the air, and we delivered 50 tons of medical supplies and 100,000 masks and gloves to New York by 5 o'clock that day. And I was the first cabinet secretary on ground zero the next day. Wow. Talking to people. It was just absolutely surreal. It's hard to really describe what was taking place in New York the day after 9/11, but I was there going to the hospitals and meeting people and going down to the morgue and set up operations. So you never know what you're going to get into in these things. Yeah. Who ever would have thought, that going to Washington to be the Department of Health and Human Services, all of a sudden you're in the center of the thing. And then I set up a program for the Global Fund to fight AIDS, tuberculosis, and malaria. I was pretty much responsible for that program. That's now probably the most successful program in the world on fighting AIDS, tuberculosis, and malaria. So I've had a lot of successes, a lot of opportunities. When you get an opportunity, like every one of us, you get an opportunity. If you take that chance and make a decision, you're able to accomplish a great deal, which I was very fortunate to do.
Yeah. So you were in government a long time.
38 years and left broke.
Yeah.
I was not like somebody that's got hundreds of millions of dollars. I left broke, and that's why I had to go to work for John Thomas.
Yeah.
I heard.
He pays well, I guess.
What?
I guess he pays well.
Well, I thought he was going to pay more, but but it was a good start.
So during your time in government, it seems to me that we have this sort of thought about government now where people inherently don't trust government anymore.
They don't. And why should they?
Why should they? Yeah.
I mean, government is not responding to the needs of everyday citizens. They're not responding to small business. They're not responding to what the public needs. I blame it. You're going to find this very surprising. I blame it on computers. And now you're going to be scratching your head saying, where are you going? Well, all of us know how sophisticated computers have become. And they have become so sophisticated that you can determine how a person is voting. And over the years, they become more sophisticated. The software has been developed. So you can go down a street in any village, small village, large city, and know pretty much the characteristics of the people on that particular street. So you're going to pretty much know if they're going to vote Democratic or Republican. And so what happens is that you, Mike, may be the Democrat. I'm the Republican. I'm on your right.
Okay.
And you're on my left, okay?
That's right.
And so you get elected to Congress as a Democrat. And you don't care about me as a Republican because because of redistricting, you got a safe Democratic seat. The worst thing you can do is to work with me because George Soros and the liberals will get somebody to run against you in the primary. Now, if I am the candidate and I win the congressional seat, I have a safe Republican seat, and I don't have to worry about talking to you or working with a Democrat. In fact, it's to my disadvantage because the far right, the Taxpayers Alliance, will come and get a candidate to run against me. So we got people in Washington, in our state capitals, that are so beholden to the ideological basis of the political parties, Democrats for the left and the Republicans to the right, that nobody anymore works in the middle. And that's why legislation doesn't get done. And that's why so many people, a small cadre of real conservative people or real liberal people, can stop can stop legislation, and legislation doesn't get passed. And good legislation, we got so many problems in this world, and there aren't the leaders to take on their political bases to come up with what is necessary. We got a huge deficit, $19 trillion. Can you imagine that?
That's a lot.
Medicare is going broke, and Social Security is going broke, and nobody wants to touch them because all they're concerned about is getting reelected. So now the game is to raise money, get reelected, and have a safe seat, and not work with each other. And that's the problem with politics today, and that's why I'm so concerned about it, and I'm so concerned about the direction of our country. And hopefully, I think the best chance we got is Paul Ryan as the speaker. Paul Ryan recognizes this particular problem, and he comes from Wisconsin, so that's a second plus.
Yeah.
And so that hopefully is going to allow Paul, if in fact he is reelected as speaker after the election, he'll be able, I think, hopefully start molding sort of a central kind of political group that's going to start working together, and that's what we need.
That's what we need. Okay, I want to remind everybody, if you have any questions for Governor Thompson, feel free to stand up. There's 2 microphones over here. There's one there, and I believe one over here. Just stand up to the microphone, and I'll try to acknowledge you, and we can.
Here it comes, guy. Go ahead.
Hi, I've got a question about your about the districting and the use of computers to figure out the voters. What can be done to combat that problem, and what role does the Voting Rights Act play in that? We'd love to hear your thoughts.
The question was with regard to the redistricting and the Voter Rights Act, and what can be done to kind of the problem you were talking about earlier. So.
Thank you very much for the question. Basically, the Voting Rights Act doesn't change that much. The Voting Rights Act has been gone up to the Supreme Court several times, and unless it's really egregious, the Supreme Court has said it's up to the legislatures, the state legislators, to make the decisions. And so, the state legislators have pretty much got awesome power, responsibility to redetermine the districts after every 10 years census. And so unless you really compact a minority group into a very small groups so that they don't have an opportunity to elect 2 or 3 out of it, the Supreme Court is going to leave you pretty much alone. They've done it in Texas, they've done it in Louisiana, and they've done it in a couple other states. But what do you have to do? You have to, hopefully, but it's very difficult because you're asking governors and legislators to actually do something against their best interests. If you're in power, your best interest is to stay in power. I mean, you want to get reelected. And so they have no real reason to try good government, and that is set up a citizens group, a nonpartisan group, a study group, a judicial group. I can think of many different groups that could take a look at the census and be able to draw compact districts that are competitive. What we got to get back to is assembly seats, congressional seats that are competitive. So Democrats and Republicans have got to fight each other to get elected. And if you fight each other, then you don't have to so much worry about having the ideological base determine the direction you're going. It's very difficult, but that's what you have to do. You have to have a governor and a legislature willing to give up power, which, as you can well imagine, is a very difficult thing. Give up power to an independent commission, an independent group, to redetermine the boundary lines for congressional seats and Senate seats and assembly seats. Senate seats at the state level, not at the U.S., because every state has two senators. So that's what you have to do, but it's very, very difficult. Iowa has done it, and has done it, and set up a study committee, and they come in and do it, and they have come up with a very bipartisan, compact district, and I would say Iowa is the best example of what they've done to change what's the norm in most states. Is it going to happen? There's more and more people like you, people like me, that are talking about it. Do I think it's going to happen very quickly? No. But I still believe that that's eventually we're going to, if we really want to break the paralysis of government at the federal and state level, this is what has to be done in order to get people more bipartisan, so that when you get elected, you don't have to worry about somebody running against you on either the right or left. You go to Washington and you want to try and get something done on a bipartisan basis. Then you got a reason to talk to Democrats if you're a Republican. You got reasons to talk to Republicans if you're a Democrat. And that's not taking place right now. We got to get back to that, or else I just don't think we're going to get the kind of government that we pay for, the kind of government that we need, and the kind of government that will solve the problems that are absolutely mounting in our country. And all of us know it. I mean, you don't have to be in politics like myself to recognize the number of problems we got. You can take them off. We got ISIS. We got social services. We got food stamp problems. We got budget problems. We got military problems. We got race problems. We got educational problems. You name it. And it's about time that we have some elected officials that are true leaders that are going to look at the good of the state or the good of the nation and come up with some solutions. And that's what we really need in this country.
One problem we haven't touched on yet is Obamacare.
Yes, right.
So is it here to stay or not?
That depends upon the election. If Donald Trump gets elected and the Senate stays in Republican hands and the House stays in under control of Paul Ryan, there's going to be dramatic changes in Obamacare. It won't be completely done away with because there are certain things that Republicans like in it, like being able to be able to get insurance even if you've got an illness, allowing people to stay covered by their parents up to 26, setting up ways in which you can get more insurance out to individuals. So there's some things inherent in Obamacare that will stay no matter what happens, no matter who gets elected. Now, if in fact Hillary Clinton gets elected as president and the Democrats take over the Senate, nothing is going to change because the Republicans are going to stay. It's pretty obvious that the Republicans will control the House of Representatives, and they are not going to take a program which Hillary Clinton and Tim Kaine want to do. They want to go more to a government-controlled system, much further than the Affordable Care Act right now, and that's not going to pass. And so you're going to have a stalemate that's going to continue on this. So it depends upon the election. If Donald Trump gets elected and Republicans maintain control of the Senate, you're going to see dramatic changes in the Affordable Care Act, and starting with allowing people to have a more control over their health insurance. You're also going to, I would strongly suggest, to be able to allow for deductions of premiums on individuals. Have a refundable tax credit so you get health insurance. They're going to have to set up a pot of money to take care of people that are uninsured or got huge insurance problems because nobody will cover them. There's ways to write an insurance plan that I would love to have the opportunity to do that would be much more acceptable, much more cost control, and give people as many opportunities they have today, if not more so.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Briefly going back to your statement about districts being preset, it's not in the best interest of a politician to cooperate because he would be giving up his power. Is term limits, in your mind, a viable solution to that?
So redistricting again, understanding it's not in the best interest of a politician to kind of go along with that. Is there a solution to it, do you think?
It cuts both ways. You know, I've never been in favor of term limits because I think the voters, that's the responsibility of the voters to determine what kind of representatives they want. And usually, the ones that are term limited are the ones you don't want term limited. It's the good people that have been there and know the system. And just because somebody has served 6 years or 8 years or 10 years and throw them out, they may be the best thing for the country right now. I'm trying to find ways to get more people like you to run, and more good people to take on the responsibility of running. We have a dearth of candidates right now in America, and you can't get people to run for school boards, you can't get people to run for city council, you can't get people to run from state legislatures and so on. And that's really sad in this republic we call America. And it's the foundation that I'm worried about, and I'm afraid term limits does not help us get to the objective of getting better people to run for these offices. That's what we need. We need leadership right now, both on the Democratic side and the Republican side. I guess, you know, I'm not as openly civil to either political party right now. I think that each political party has abandoned what their basic reason for running, and that's solving problems for America and for their constituents. And what's right now we've got political parties set up really just to control the power and the authority, and that bothers me. And so I don't think term limits. If I thought term limits would further that opportunity to get more people to run, I'd be in favor of it. But I just don't see it. I think just the opposite, and I think that would be I think the only ones who would really hurt are people that are really doing a good job. Because even though I'm being somewhat cynical right now, there still are some great people that are in public life and doing a great job on both sides that want to do what is right. It's the problem is that the system is paralyzing them to the extent of getting things done, and we got to somehow unshackle the system in order for us to get more people to really do what is necessary.
Okay.
Hey, Mike, question. Reverting back to the topic of health insurance,
Yes.
companies like Aetna and many hospital-sponsored exchanges
Yes.
are going wayside, as in they can't make it work. So I'm wondering, you said you have an idea on how to create a profitable insurance. What would you do to change this, or where is Obamacare going?
You got to take away the penalties. You got to take away with the mandates. You got to have much more of a way for insurance companies to make a profit. I mean, you can't expect an insurance company to stay into an insurance exchange if they're going to lose money. I mean, you wouldn't be buying a building for your REIT and knowing that it's going to end up losing you money. You wouldn't be compiling statistics, if you didn't have anybody to sell it to. So you put yourself in the position. Insurance companies are not making any money under the system. They're losing. And so because of the restrictions of the rules and regulations, you got to be able to set up the system so that it opens it up. And you got to be able to allow for the charging of premiums that's necessary to make a living in that particular thing. And then you've got to be able to have a pot of money to be able to fund those individuals that are going to cost the system so much that they're going to be able to. You're going to have the federal or state governments behind them. You got to allow for the Medicaid and the Medicare systems to open up and allow for more competition in Medicare and Medicaid. Insurance companies would love to get into that area, but when the government says you can't do it, that's a problem. exchanges can work. Exchanges, it's got a bad name because of the Obamacare, because there's so many rules and regulations. But the truth of the matter is that insurance exchanges, if you put your product up there and you've got an unfeathered system that you can put it up on a system that you can, all of us use our telephones and our iPads right now to buy anything and everything. And if you get it on there and you start placing your orders, you can make insurance exchanges work. But you can't have a state system and a federal system. You've got to set up a system that's going to allow companies to come in there and be able to charge what is necessary and let the free market work. I like exchanges because I think it gives them a chance to compare Aetna with United Healthcare, with Blue Cross and Blue Shield. And I can pick as a constituent, as a buyer, the best product for myself and my family. And what's wrong with that? That's the free enterprise system. The system doesn't let that work right now and doesn't allow the insurance companies to make a profit. And if they're not going to make a profit, they're not going to play. They've been playing for 3 years, hoping tomorrow it's going to turn around. Well, it hasn't turned around. It's gotten worse. So all the insurance companies are pulling out of the exchanges and pulling out of the market because of rules and regulations, the restriction of profits and restrictions of being able to raise the premiums. You got to be able to, we live in a capitalistic society, and thank God we do. And we have to allow the system, the free enterprise system, to work, and it's based upon profits and loss. Not 950 million loss like Donald Trump, but losses that are absolutely out there, but you got to be able to have a profit.
Okay. What about other countries? Are there other health systems in other countries that you admire?
Michael, I've traveled all over the world. I've given speeches in, probably 70 different countries, and I've studied their health care. If you're sick, this is a rhetorical question. If you're sick, where do you want to be sick? You want to be sick in the United States of America. You can make comparisons, and a lot of people make comparisons, that our prenatal deaths are worse than they are in Sweden. And they said based upon the total system, U.S. healthcare is ranked number 20th or 25th, or so on. But I always come back to that person that's saying that. I said, okay, fine. You can make comparisons and statistics, but if you got a terminal illness, where do you want to go to be taken care of? Mayo? Cleveland Health Lab? Sloan Kettering? I want to be in the United States. And that's why anybody that can afford to come that's really sick any place in the world, they will try to come to the United States. So overall, we got problems. And we got to work on our problems. We got to fix it. But the overall quality of getting better, I would pick a doctor in the United States to do it. Now, not all doctors are the same. Not all hospitals are the same. And you're going to find some that make mistakes, but you do that any place. So I would say, I happen to love the United States of America. People say, well, let's go to a one-payer system like Canada has. Yeah, well, sure, we could go to a one-payer system. It's going to be more expensive, more regulated. The government's going to make a decision. And if you're 55 or older, like I am, they're not going to let you have certain operations. You're probably not going to be able to get a transplant. And if in United Kingdom, which is also a government-controlled system, some medicines that cost over $50,000 at a particular age, they're not going to let you buy them. The government's not going to give them to you. Now, if you're that person that has to have that medicine in England, and you happen to have arrived at the grand old age of 55, and that medicine is going to keep you alive, you're going to be mad as hell about not being able to get it in the United Kingdom. Or if you got an operation in Canada, you got to stay in the queue. You got to stay in the queue until a doctor gets freed up and the government says you can go in and get that operation. And in Japan, they keep you in the hospital long enough so the hospitals are all filled, and if you keep the hospitals full all the time, you don't have new patients coming in. And so it's different ways that people are holding down the cost. Germany's trying to adopt a more free enterprise type of system. And so I'm looking around the world, and I've seen a lot more people trying to adopt what America's doing. So I'd say overall, I think still the United States of America has got the best healthcare system, and I don't think we'll ever get to a government-controlled system. And I would fight it tooth and nail because I think the Obamacare has shown that a top-down regulated system, which the Accountable Care Act is, it doesn't work. And I think a government-controlled system with all the decisions being made by the government would be even a bigger catastrophe.
Cuts into you. So let's talk about the election.
Yes.
Who do you think is going to win the election? And I mean, you know both candidates, right?
I know them very well.
Excuse me. Do you mind if
share
I hop in with a quick question real quick?
Sure.
So something I've been kind of digesting for the last 10 or 15 minutes since you mentioned it is the lack of real leadership,
Right.
and how the perverse incentives are kind of taking the guts out of the real leadership in our government. I was wondering, as a perhaps naive 22-year-old student, how the Citizens United decision has added to that, and what your personal experience is with fundraising, having that being either a major or a minor part of what you do. I know I read something, I'm not sure how legitimate it was, but how some representatives are spending upwards of 2/3 of their time fundraising exclusively.
They do.
And I would love if you could provide some sort of personal insight into the impact of that decision.
Well, the decision. I didn't hear the total.
It was can you mention the act again?
Citizens United.
The
It was a
Citizens
Supreme
United
Court
Act.
decision.
Are you familiar with
United,
that?
which open up the opportunity to spend more money on campaigns and candidates, and took away the limits and allowed people to be able to use money to coordinate with special interest groups and so on. People point to that as being what has caused the problems, because not that I don't think that isn't too much money in the system, there is, but I think, labor unions could always, before the decision, could always contribute. Businesses couldn't. And what this does is sort of levels the playing field and makes it easier. I still think that there should be some type, I'm speaking for myself and not for Republican Party. I still think we have to get back to some kind of limits. There's just too much money being spent, and it takes way too much time of a congressman and a senator to try and raise money in order for running for re-election. And I think we should put some sensible limits on campaigns and candidates, but have a level playing field so that everybody is able to know what the rules are and not have it completely one-sided. Right now, there's so many special interest groups that are setting up PACs that are spending in this presidential, like billions of dollars, millions of dollars. That's going to be well over $1 billion in each side, and that, we all know Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton. I don't think all of these ads on television, the attack ads, are going to change that much. So I think we could hopefully hold it down and have some limits. I am a minority in that, so you know that, but I still think I'm right, and think we should have some. But I don't think it was a decision, Supreme Court decision that you've indicated, which has been the cause. I think it's just been building, and I think if we have a level playing field, if we could do that with a constitutional amendment on a bipartisan basis, I think we could set up a fairer system. And you asked me about the candidates.
Yeah, so who's going to win the election, and what, do you have a story about any of either of them?
The election, I wished I knew how Donald was going to act on Sunday night. If Donald has a good debate on Sunday night, it's amazing to me that the worst week of his campaign has been this last week, and he's still in the margin of error for winning, which tells me that people really are taking a serious look at both candidates. And let's face it, nobody, if anybody had the opportunity, they would have somebody else as the Republican nominee and somebody else as Democrat candidate. Nobody really likes these two candidates. I mean, I'm being overly general, but a vast majority of people have some skepticism and concerns about both candidates. And so the situation is that Donald Trump is hit a very responsive chord in the body politic in America. People that feel that they've been abused, feel the government does not respond, have had something, they've run into some sort of a rule or regulation that harmed them, they're paying too much in taxes, they don't have a decent enough job, something's wrong with their health care system, the government is telling them too much, and those people out there don't belong to any political party. They're just a vast majority of individuals that are very mad and upset. And those individuals have bought into Donald Trump. And Donald Trump is actually speaking for them. And that is very explosive. And it could be as Donald Trump has said, it could be a movement. And come election day, if in fact that movement is still there, if Donald Trump does well on Sunday night and on the 19th in Nevada in the debates, when it's going to be 75 to 80 million people be listening in, people that haven't really made up their minds, there's enough undecided people that are going to be watching those two debates that's going to swing the election. And so I don't know how he's going to do, but I think that right now the momentum is with Donald Trump. Even after this worst week where he started tweeting at 3 o'clock in the morning and taking on something, if he would just stay on message, he'd be so much better off. And I think last night, I don't know how many of you saw it, but the vice presidential debate helped him a great deal. Mike Pence did a great job. And it was obvious that Mike Pence won the debate by all indications. Everybody, Democrats, Republicans alike this morning, said he did. So that helped. It showed the American public that here's a Donald Trump who they're somewhat concerned about making decisions. He's got somebody in the bullpen that they trust and feel comfortable with. And that's going to resonate up to Donald Trump. Now, if Donald Trump does what Mike Pence did last night, Sunday night, this is going to be a campaign that's going to get very close, and it's going to be right down to the margins. And then who wins New Hampshire? Here are the states to look out. Republicans have got to win Florida. They got to win North Carolina. They got to win Ohio. And if they pick up Virginia, New Hampshire, Pennsylvania, Donald Trump is the president. If Hillary wins Ohio or Florida and North Carolina, it's all over, and Hillary will be the president. So it's those 3 or 4 states with New Hampshire. There is a possibility, if Donald Trump wins New Hampshire, that it could come out 269 electoral votes to 269, which would be a tie. The tie goes to the House of Representatives. And the House of Representatives will be controlled by Republicans, so Donald Trump will definitely win in the House of Representatives. He won't get all the Republicans, but he will get enough to be the President of the United States. So it's that close. But if Donald Trump wins Florida, North Carolina, Ohio, and New Hampshire, and either Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, or Michigan, he's president. If Hillary wins Virginia, Florida, and North Carolina, she is the president. And if she wins Ohio, there's no question she'll be the president. So it's that close. So nobody can tell you right now who's going to win, but it's going to be one of the closest elections. It's going to be going back to Al Gore and George W. Bush. It could be that close. And it could actually end up a tie electoral votes and could actually end up in the House of Representatives. Sort of hard to predict, but it's possible. But right now, if you ask me, I would say that I think Donald Trump has got the momentum, and if he does stays on message, just because Hillary's has been there for so long, and they want a change in America, I think the change is going to work in the favor of Donald Trump, and I think he would be the odds-on favorite to win. Now, what a story about Donald Trump. Donald Trump, I had coffee with him 3 weeks ago in La Crosse. And it was Rudy Giuliani, Donald Trump, myself, and one other guy. And I went up there to tell him, I say, stay the hell out of Wisconsin. You can't win. And he said, why? And he was very combative at the beginning, but I mean, very friendly, very knowledgeable. And he said, I said, because you can't win. You're 15 points down. There's no way you're going to win. You're wasting your resources. Go to Florida. Go to Ohio. And he left, and the polls got tighter. So he calls me up and he says, Tommy, what do you think about me coming back to Wisconsin now? I mean, I thought it was something he would ask me about whether or not he's come back to Wisconsin. I said, I think it's time for you to come back to Wisconsin. Since then, he's been back last week, and he's coming back Saturday. So Wisconsin is in play, and Wisconsin is hardly ever in play. Well, I tell you the story is, I found him to be, he's bigger than I expected, tall, and he's bigger size than I anticipated. And he was very knowledgeable and very, not the bully that you would expect. And so I was impressed by that. He was with Rudy Giuliani, and I told him what I thought he should do in the debates. He didn't follow me there. But it's the type of thing, that he does listen. Whether or not he carries through, it's hard to believe. Hillary, I know Bill much better. When I was governor of my freshman year, I was assigned Bill Clinton Bill Clinton was my pledge father. So I went down to Little Rock, Arkansas several times and met personally with Bill Clinton and with Hillary, and had the opportunities to get to know them quite well. And so, if you've been in a fraternity, you can remember back your pledge father or brother. That's what Bill Clinton was for me, to try and teach me how to be a good governor. And he was very friendly, very outgoing. You'd like to go out and have a beer with him. Bill is a nice guy. As friendly and as affable as Bill is, Hillary is just as cold as you see on television. And I think the person that said on Saturday Night Live, did the skit on her, I think it's very accurate. She said, if you vote for me as president, I'll go in the Oval Office and you'll never see me again. But if I don't win, you're going to see me every day I'm out running for president again. And so it's up to you. And so I think that skit was pretty accurate of describing Hillary Clinton. She's not the friendliest person, and Bill is very affable, just the opposite. And they must have a feud going on, because Hillary's been talking strongly about the Affordable Care Act, and Bill came out yesterday and says it really doesn't do a very good job. So it's pretty hard to reconcile those two differences, but that's it.
Crazy.
Okay, so we have a few minutes left. Let's.
You're going to ask me a question about Deanie?
I can, yeah. I heard is Deanie here? Deanie Taylor? So I heard a rumor.
Does everybody know Deanie?
Deanie is the Chief Investment Officer for Physicians Realty Trust. Is that correct? Yeah.
That's correct. That's what he says he is.
I heard a rumor that as board chair, you voted against hiring him. Is that true?
That's not exactly true, but there is a story behind it. You know, we're down in Florida having a. Does everybody know Deanie Taylor?
Yes.
We were down in Florida, and John wanted me to get to know him. John knew him and wanted to hire him. So he says, Tommy, go out and have dinner with he and his wife. And everybody knows I'm governor of Wisconsin. Everybody knows that my preference in football and basketball would be, of course, the Badgers. So I take him out to eat on a night and have a couple glasses of wine. He seems like a really nice guy. And then all of a sudden, I don't know who brought it up, but he was telling me he will never, ever move to Wisconsin because he will not leave Purdue. And Purdue is the best school in the nation, and they got the best basketball team and football team, even though they never win. And I thought, how could I vote for somebody that's that dumb that thinks Purdue is the best at football? And so he bet. And so I think it was a $25 bet, and he lost. Badgers won and Purdue lost. And to his credit, he sent me a $25 check. And I never expected to see it, but I got the check. And so I figured anybody that would pay their bets, you know, over a beer, has got to be an upstanding guy. So I changed my opinion, even though I don't like who he supports, and voted for him. But that's the story of my run-in with Deanie Taylor.
He's a fantastic guy.
Good thing you paid your bet.
Yeah. So what got you into the medical office? I mean, you have all this experience in government and different healthcare things. What attracted you to the MOB space?
John Thomas, he called me up one day and said, he said it's a crazy idea. He says in Milwaukee, John and I go back sometime, and John was a very close friend of mine, and John called me and he says, John Sweet wants me to come and take over a REIT that's not doing so well in Milwaukee and wants to go out publicly. And he said, I think it's a crazy idea. But I would like to have you, if I do take it, I'd like to have you come in and be my chairman so we can work together. So I said, sure. And so we went to New York in July 19th, 20th, 21st, and 22nd. Went out and went public and sold $135 million of shares of stock. And we've never looked back. We paid our first dividend 67 days after we went public. I don't know any corporation that's ever done that. And we've gone from the $135 million that we sold to now we've got $3 billion in assets. So we've grown very rapidly, and it's the leadership of John Thomas, the team out there, Deanie and Mark Thine, and all those individuals, Dan Klein, and just a bunch of great people. And I couldn't be happier than being chairman of such an outstanding growth company. They're wonderful people, fun to deal, and we're growing rapidly, as you know.
Growing rapidly, yeah. Is there any particular thing about the sector or any place that you kind of excites you about investing, or?
I call it legalized thievery. I mean, here are doctors that spent their whole lives, Mike, building their assets. They got all of their money tied up into a medical office building, and they want, at age 55, which is the average age of doctors in America right now, they want to monetize, and so they monetize, and people like John Thomas and John Sweet and Deanie Taylor and Tommy Thompson and Mark Thine come in and say, we'll give you a hell of a deal. We'll buy your asset, and you give us a triple net lease for 10 years with a kicker of 2.5% to 3%. 4%, and we stay back and clip the coupons. You pay, you pay for everything, and we go to the market and sell our shares and get the money and pay them, and we sit back and clip the coupons. Not a bad deal. Legalized thievery. It's a great deal, and I couldn't be. What's wrong with that? But
That's the REIT business, isn't
it's
it?
a REIT business, fantastic business, and that's why you're all in it. It's a fantastic business, and that's why everybody else is trying to get into it, because it is a great business, and all of you do a great job, and thank you very much for coming in and listening to me, and I appreciate it, but I really think the REIT business is one that we're all very fortunate to be involved. We do a great service. I make jokes about it, but it's a great service to a lot of doctors that have a way out, and we think we're doing a great job, and I know you do with your companies, and I think together, and you help us a great deal, Mike, with Revista, giving us the data to determine how everybody else is doing and the direction we're going. I thank you. I thank your partners, your 3 partners, and I thank all of you for being in the REIT space, because it's going to grow. People see that this is an opportunity to make money, and there's not that many places to invest money right now in capital. And this is one area that can. And as we talked over the lunch hour, we're just scratching the surface with medical office buildings. And so
There's
I
a
think
lot of
we're
runway.
all in the right space, and I think next year we'll be back here. We'll have more people in the room, and we'll be able to talk about who won the election and what the hell's going on. But thank you very much.
Good deal. Thank you, Governor Thompson. Okay, well, thanks, Governor Thompson, for coming here. Appreciate it very much.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you all for coming. We want to thank all the panelists for coming and all the audience for coming. We want to thank our partners, our sponsors. We also want to thank Elisa Freeman and Cynthia Wharton, the Revista staff, who worked so hard to put this event together. We want to remind you that a survey will be sent out to all attendees. Please try to fill that out, return it to us, give us any feedback you have on our event. And between now and then, we'll see you next year. So thanks, everybody, for coming. Thanks, Michael. Thank you.